Some of you may be curious, what is Malaysia? What's so good about Malaysia and what place is good in Malaysia? Is Malaysia is famous? Now let's going to find out about Malaysia. Malaysia is very famous, especially in its part of the Asia. Now, there are a lot of languages and policies that are used in Asia. But before we tackle and explore about that, let's have a recap and then have a teaser about the Malaysia, the traditions and the culture of Malaysia.
Hi guys, let's explore the Malaysia.
So what we're going to tackle about first is the history of the Malaysia and their culture of Malaysia. Well, the culture of Malaysia is diverse and melange of influences from both East and the West. With an eclectic population spanning various ethnic groups, Malaysia is a glorious knitting pot of traditions and practices spanning generations. This, combined with Western sensibilities, presents a unique juxtaposition that is delight to experience. Dive into the unique culture of Malaysia. Let's go. Of course, what we're going to tackle first is their festival. Malaysian festivals are delight to participate in the celebrations are colorful, vibrant, noisy, and dynamic, which is the Mooncake Festival. It is started on August and until September. Is a must visit to sample the delicious cakes and pray to the Chinese moon goddess for love and prosperity. While the Chinese New Year from January to February is a week-long celebration with delicious food and dances and music. Of course, not only the festival of Malaysia that is make it interesting. Let's talk about their food also. Tourists can expect Malay, Chinese, Peranakan, Indian, Indonesia, Filipino, Japanese, Thai, and Western food in Malaysia. From meaty wonders like mee goreng mamak, or it is called yellow noodles, beef and shrimp, or in other places it is called ramen, and laksa means noodle soup with fish. Roti john also means meat sandwiches, and rendang, also called coconut milk and meat curry. Of course, their dances also is there. Malaysia has a diverse range of musical tastes from slow ballads, festive folk, and tribal numbers. Rock and roll chartbusters and the special pop yeye movement traditional Malay music is mostly reliant on percussion instruments, fluences, and oboes, and is played at celebrations, weddings, and religious rituals. Indian, Chinese, and Islamic music are also popular new genres like hip-hop, jazz, and rock tribe in the country. We have now a background. What is Malaysian? But what are about their languages? What about the policies of their languages? Well, let's going to tackle about that also. Bahasa Malay and English are the most commonly spoken languages in Malaysia, but the thriving migrant population has ensured the spread of Mandarin, Chinese, Tamil, and other Asian languages. English is the most official language of communication and most local are bilingual. It is advised to know a few phrases in the local language, Malay, to warm up the locals. Now, let's talk about the Malaysia's languages policy. The aim of this study is to examine the development and the implementation of language medium policy in Malaysia education system and its relation to nation building. Emerson 1957, Fornival 1948, and other else are contended that Malaysia plural society was divided in almost every respect. As I mentioned a while ago that the Emerson 1957, Fornival 1948, Chopra 1974 is contended that Malaysian plural society was divided into almost very respect. As a plural society, nation building or national integration, Abraham 1980 is considered of the most language also in Malaysia. Now, let's talk about also the Malaysian education policy language medium policy. The language medium policy refers to the medium of instruction in schools. The language medium policy in Malaysia educational system is as follow. Let's tackle about this one. The first one is National School Primary. They use Malay 5393, Mandarin 1284, and Tamil 1526, and English as a medium instruction of science and math. Now, let's talk about the nationalism and nationism of Malaysia. The concepts of nationalism and nationism in language planning and language use have been posited by Joshua Fishman 1968. He defines nationalism, socio-cultural integration as the process of transforming from fragmentary and tradition-bound ethnicity to unifying and ideologized nationality. According to him, the tie between language and nationalism represents a more ideologized historical interaction in terms of mass ideology, language as one of its markers of symbolic unity and identity. On the other hand, nationism or politico-geographical integration is a process where the political boundaries were most silent as most efforts are directed towards maintaining and strengthening them regardless of the immediate sociocultural character of the populations they embrace. Fishman 1968 were areas in nationalism the development of self-identity and group identity is through a common group in nationism. It is the questions of efficiency or group cohesion that is improved, where areas in nationalism the development of self-identity and group identity is through a common group. In nationalism, it is the question of efficiency or group cohesion that is important. Malaysia has always upheld the same philosophy of nationalism and nationism ever since independence, but the modes that went with the times were different. The requirements of nationalism and nationism can be in conflict where language is concerned, since the problem language presents for nationism are pragmatic rather than a symbolic. A solution to a nationalist problem often creates a nationalist problem. Ireland is to declare both Irish and English as official language, while India and Malaysia had declared the chosen nationalist language, which is the Hindi and Malay language, as official. However, both of them allowed de facto the retention of English as a second language of the government. Other countries, for example Mali, did not make any official section and used the colonial language for government while they searched for solutions to the national language problem, which is the Alice 2004. A national language is more than just the language of the government or education. It is the symbols of people's identity as citizens of the nation. A national language in some cases might not be enough for the fulfillment of all high functions. National language was served the unified separatist functions. However, some human activities require the participatory functions refers to participation in worldwide cultural developments such as science and technology, international business, and diplomacy. Since separatist and participatory functions are opposed to each other, not every nation will be able to use the same language for both. According to the language theory by Fishman, 1973, the function of nationalists is only sufficient for the needs of the ideologies, and the nation, whereas the function of nationists acclaim the pragmatic characteristics of that language, that is, the language is able to contribute to the nation's growth and success. Fishman had summarized that a growing nation requires two languages, each having in its own distinct and function. The mother tongue is normally honored as the national language and serves its purpose as a unification symbol. This language is built for patriotic pride and nationalistic symbol of the country to be used as a unification tool only. On the other hand, the language that is required for pragmatic function as needed in the administration of several fields such as economy, industry, science, and technology is the language that is considered modern, business-friendly language of international level, current and scientific, that being English. This colonial and appealing view of Fishman is the product of famous American linguists of 1940s and 1950s such as Worf Safir. This view is clearly untrue and has been rejected by the world linguist, which is the Baron 1990. But unfortunately, this view is being used in the Malaysia language policy, which has observed recently the change of medium of instruction from Malay to English in the teaching the mathematics and science subjects at primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of education. It's clearly going against the UNESCO or the UNESCO Charter, which states that the students at primary level need to learn using their mother tongue, which is the Baron 1990, and that is all about the nationalism and nationism of the Malaysia's language policy.
Of an Educational Policy, Education Act 1960 and 1996. Colonial educational policy or polarization policy. Most of the schools in urban areas were not in English medium. English medium schools offered students sample opportunities for further education, employment in the civil service, and access to scholarships. These schools received generous funding from the government. Also, since its impact was in the urban areas, the majority of the student population was non-Malay, in fact, mostly Chinese. Economic and academic achievements were associated with ethnic groups from the urban areas. The majority of the Malays who were mainly located in the rural areas could not benefit from these opportunities. Viewed that the separate development of the ethnic groups as a deliberate product of the British colonial policy of divide and rule. The Malays who were suffering from profound economic, political, and psychological anxieties about their place in society entered independence in their hands. Their aim was to gradually reverse sense of backwardness by the Malay after decades of colonialism. Part 2. The representatives of Malay, Chinese, and Indian communities took an increasing part in educational policy making. The English-educated Malays realized that the emphasis on English education would favor the urban non-Malays. The pressure towards Malay as a national language and Malay as medium of education can be seen by a series of landmark committee reports.
From 1957 to the 2000, unfortunately, the major language of Malaysia was Malay language, or also known as Bahasa Melayu, which is the national language, while Chinese and Tamil as their dialects. Over 290 million people speak Malay, either natively or second language, putting it within the top 10 most spoken languages in the world. Regarding the language policy of the Malaysian, their committee aim was the transformation of all vernacular schools into national schools, where English would be the medium of instruction with the prior approval of the Minister of Education. English was suggested as a medium of instruction to develop skills and knowledgeable human resources for economic prosperity of the new nation. Therefore, in 1996, the Malaysian government introduced the Education Act of 1999 and the Private Higher Education Institution Act, the former approved in using English as a medium of instruction for technical areas in post-secondary courses, and latter allowed the use of English in courses which were provided through twinning arrangements with overseas institutions as well as offshore campuses. The government supported a significant program for language cultivation and modernization. The demand for English was further fueled by the internationalization of education, which led to the establishment of English medium affiliates of international universities. In 2002, the government announced a reversal of its language policy, calling for a switch to English as the medium of instruction at all levels.
All ethnic background in Malaysia has their own views on the races because they have different historical experiences and don't have a common image of destiny. And emerged in the 1957 independence was drive self-rule by the Malay political elite. The Chinese and Indian leader achieved independence without really preparing the national base from dreams of independence and ideology of nationalism. And on May 14, riot in Malaysia in 1969 demonstrate the relationship between ethnic issues and languages. They were the culminations of Malay-Chinese conflict that ended in 1969 general election, which resulted for Malay to lose their supremacy and created the spectacles of minority groups overtaking the Malays. Therefore, the Bahasa Malaysia cultural factor was not given enough attention that added to the current conflict and hindered the formation of a national identity and existence of unified Malaysian race. And due to the factor of multicultural nature in Malaysia, culture, language, and religion have been a hindrance to the effort of building national identity. Thus, all political and administrative decisions must be made considering ethnic group traditions. Another fact is that Malaysian language policy is more complex than other parts of East and South Asia because Malaysia is a multilingual and ethnic country wherein indigenous and foreign ethnic groups such as Chinese and Indians coexist. And although Bahasa Malaysia has become the official language, its practical status is still not fully recognized because the lovers and supporters of the English language, including Malay leaders, believe that everything can solve through the use of English language in everyday life. Thus, according to Rakpa and Wee 2006, English serves as the dual purpose of assisting nations in their economic development while also serving as a language that promotes ethnic unity in multicultural nations. Therefore, the Malaysian language still gives way to English language and in certain cases, the language loses out to Mandarin.
In the Malaysian context, the Education Act of 1961 contained the principal law that regulates education in Malaysia at all levels. It enshrines an education policy which affirms the role of the national language as the medium of instruction and provides a common curriculum and a common public examinations for schools. Despite the above act, the reality in the private education sector is that English is used as the medium of instruction. There is no enforcement of the National Language Act in the private sector because the government realizes that for the educational sector to flourish, freedom with regard to the medium of instruction policy has to be given. How is the Malaysian politics of nation buildings, particularly in the relation to ethnic politics, affected by the rapid development of large private education system? The Malaysian state finds itself on the horns of dilemma. Its economic interests lie in supporting the trend towards the international private education, but its interest in nation building suggests that it should attempt to expand its public education sector. The current Malaysian government is ideologically committed to reducing its public sector and has sought therefore to support the development of a relatively constrained private education system within Malaysia. Plan that aims to improve quality of education in the country. It includes strategies to enhance teaching and learning, improve student achievement, and promote equity. The implementation of this policy involves various stakeholders, including the government, educators, parents, and students. They work together to ensure that the policy's objectives are achieved. For example, the government provides funding and resources. Educators design and deliver curriculum aligned with the policy. Parents support their children's learning at home, and students actively participate in their education.